for the DCTA to order at 3:13 p.m. And I have asked Carter to pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for your watch care over this great state of Texas, over our nation, and over our local area. Father, we ask that you watch over our transit agency, give us wisdom as we go through our discussions and our deliberations, and help us to serve you and the citizens of this community in a manner worthy of our calling. In Jesus' name, amen.
Very good. We do have one visitor today. Tim Owens, one of our members from ACU, one of our drivers. He's here. And then Raymond, you'd like to introduce a new staff member.
Yes, I would. Very enthusiastically want to introduce Michelle Bloomer. She is our new Assistant Vice President of Operations. Michelle comes to us as a General Manager of First Transit. She also was a GM at Catholic Charities and spent a long and distinguished career with the North Central Texas Council of Governments. And Michael Morris actually provided just an overwhelming, pardon me? Yes, he did, yeah. And reference for Michelle. She has done a fantastic job in the short time that she's been here, and we're looking forward to all the great things that she'll do for us moving forward. So please welcome Michelle.
Yes. I'm going to ask Honor to talk about this, but we talk about this it seems like it's getting to be a regular occurrence that the Government Finance Officers Association recognizes DCTA for some of the hard work that our finance team does. So I'm going to let Honor explain that to you.
Yes, thank you, Jim. Before I ask Commander Riddle to come up and accept the award, I'd like to just tell you a little bit about what this is. I know that we talk about the criteria that we follow, but what I wanted to do is, first of all, the Government Finance Officers Association is a national association that incorporates cities, other governmental agencies, and they provide guidance and policies and best practices on how to provide information and processes and that you should follow for your budgets. And they also review CAPRs. And so we submit our budget document every year, and 3 reviewers review the document. We don't know who the reviewers are. They could be anyone that's a member anywhere across the U.S. They review the document. There are 27 criteria, and within each of those criteria areas, there are different items that they look at. So really a total of 81 points that you can get for meeting the different criteria that they establish. And they talk, there's some mandatory criteria that you also have to pass before you can receive the award. And this year, of the possible 81 points, we got 30 that are in the outstanding category and the remainder in the proficient. And our goal has always been to move, the bar's a little higher, to move to the outstanding category. And what I wanted to share just very briefly with the board, if I could, and I shared some with the Finance Committee, is that one of the areas that was one of the high rated that received a number of outstanding criteria was where we talk about the department descriptions, the goals and objectives, and the performance measures that we use. When you look at the document, there's additional detail. But some of the comments, when they talked about how the document, the outstanding nature of the document, one of the reviewers talked about its excellent link to the agency goals, which is really important when we talk about what the vision is that the agency sets for the agency, and also a great job of reporting and actually tracking on the status of that activity, which a lot of times gets lost in the shuffle of the numbers. That there is a purpose to the numbers, and it's to track and make sure that we're meeting the goals of the agency. And so they have very specific comments, and they really talked about a lot about how we do our capital project documentation. If you look in the capital component of the budget, and I normally bring a copy of the budget document itself so I can hold it up, but this was for the current fiscal year that we're in. But one of the important things about capital is we add capital is what is the ongoing operating impact of that capital, because sometimes that can get lost. And I won't say what city, but I've seen it occur where you will build a fire station but forget that you need fire engines and firefighters to staff. So so looking at that piece of it, it's really important to understand how those things impact the ongoing operations. And so they had some excellent comments on how we handle that, about the detail on the capital expenditure side, and also how it really serves as a document for readers of the information that we provide. Because at the end of the day, if you have a document that people don't open, you've really not shared the information. And so it goes to our bondholders, people that we do business with. FTA gets copies of these documents. And so I think it's just a good commentary, and we're very proud of the work. And again, we keep setting the bar higher every year. But I just wanted to let you know kind of some of the comments. They're very specific. If there are things they want us to correct, they will also make recommendations on improvements. So with that, usually I just stand up and we hand the award, but I did want you to understand kind of the criteria and background and the feedback that we get in very specific detail on how our documents are meeting or not what they outline at a national level. So with that, I would like to ask Amanda to come forward. And again, as I mentioned to the Finance Committee, it's really, we work a lot with the departments, but at the end of the day, getting the document pulled together, making sure all the information is correct. As they say, it kind of funnels to one place by the time you get everything pulled together. So I'd like to hand this to Amanda and for our certificate, and then we'll have a little plaque out on the wall. And so we'll get to add the little button that has 2015. So, thank you. I'll make you make a speech.
Please thank your staff for all the work.
I do thank all of my staff for all of their work.
We have one of each in most of our positions, so. So thank you. Thank you for the time, I appreciate it.
Would you also comment on the numbers of times this organization has been so recognized?
I believe that the budget document we have received, is this the 7th time? And the comprehensive annual financial report, I believe, hopefully, I think we're on our 3rd or 4th year, but for 7, I believe, for the budget, 7 for the budget document.
I think we all recognize doing a great job these days. Would you also share with the board your experience, Jeff?
Oh, although I don't currently serve in a position on GFOA, I have been on the budget review committees. I was also on the budget committee, and then I was on the national committee for selection of the participants at the executive level. So I did serve for a number of years as a GFOA budget reviewer.
So we are indeed fortunate to have someone with your experience.
Well, thank you. But really, it's the staff that really gets all the work done at the end of the day. So we appreciate, I definitely appreciate all their hard work.
On that? Okay. Number 1 is consent agenda. A is approval of minutes for the board work session regular meeting on April 28, 2016. B, acceptance of financial statements for 2016. C, authorize the president to execute amendment to Dallas Area Rapid Transit DART interlocal agreement. D, authorize the president to execute an agreement for external audit services. E, authorize the president to execute an amendment to the Integrated Marketing Communications Services Agreement. F, authorize the president to enter into an interlocal purchasing agreement with the North Central Texas Council of Governments, NCT COG. Mr. Klein, any comments there?
No, just certainly, we bring this forward as consent agenda items that have already, that are routine in nature. If there's any board members who wish to see an item pulled off separately, that's just takes one of you to do that. I'd like to see that happen.
Any comments or questions on these?
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve, do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Consent agenda passes. Regular agenda 2A, discussion approval of resolution 1604 adopting fiscal year 2016 revised operating and capital budget.
What I'd like to do, if I could, is let me hit the high points, those big ticket items that we talked about. Again, it's been translated from a one-page sheet to put on 5 PowerPoint slides for eligibility purposes only, but I did want to review that. And then I'll turn it over to Anna and Amanda for any questions y'all might have about some details. Let me go through 4 or 5 slides, hit the high points, and then whatever, and then we can, if you'd like us to go through some, whatever questions you may have, we will. This was discussed in detail at the finance committee meeting, and they talked about.
Yes,
So-
it was.
Yes.
And a joyful discussion it was. It was good. And I like it, just real quick, this is just one more step in the budget process, right? We were recognized for last year's, the continuation of a real solid process for making sure that we keep track of our budget, look for savings, modify the projects as we go forward. So this is a lot of hard work that Anna and Amanda and the whole team with operations and everybody came together to make this happen. So as we look through the FY16, a couple of big items here that we've got. One is we did recently, the litigation with URS closed. We're able to shift 1.4 million into cash. It did not appear on the cash flow model because that was all on the balance sheet. Okay, but that still saved us that money. We do still have a bill. We still have $143,442,000 remaining in the budget for the final legal bill. We should get that next month. We think that'll cover it. Operations and fuel and purchase transportation, that's the rail contract savings. We're able to transfer just under $2 million to the capital infrastructure fund. You'll see that in the cash flow model that changed for this year. That was just a little under $1 million for bus and rail fuel. That was net of a couple of things. That was net of the TAP bus purchase, the emergency lighting, facility study, and the on-demand study. So we did some things with the savings. We can use those captured funds already, and we've taken the rest and moved it down into the capital infrastructure fund. All of those things were reflected in budget transfers that I brought to you every month. And Amanda memorializes and we keep those things, so we've got good tracking of those things that happen with that. For those funds to come out of this capital infrastructure fund, we will need your approval to do that. Of course, we have some ideas, but that's going to be at the action, based on action of the board. Okay? So, good news there.
Well, can you back up on us? The 1 million savings has not hit the budget yet. It's what we anticipate once the new contract's in place.
No,
correct?
that's not correct.
That is the savings realized this year.
That is the actual
Only this
savings.
year.
Only this year.
Only this
The
year.
one time.
Now, hope does spring eternal, but we will know when we get everything laid out for the next part of the contract. Again, that's why in the cash flow model, if you look at the bus and rail costs for next year, we left those the same. That's at the higher fuel cost and previously assumed amounts for purchase transportation. FY17 budget process, we'll talk about fuel, we'll talk about the rail contract.
So going out on our own saved us $1 million this year,
Yes.
and hopefully we'll be able to continue.
I don't know
We'll
yet.
see.
We'll see. Again, we did be competitive. We got 4 proposals, so the idea of it being competitive is very strong. So we're good on that. So that's where we are. One-time savings goes into capital. That's where one-time savings need to go, into one-time expenditures. Set aside for those things, not for continuing ongoing expenses, hoping that happens. Next slide, please. We did have the Louisville Hike and Bike Trail. When you look there and you see that we added, I think it's $2,995,000, okay, in my world, that's $3 million. That has a $600,000 local match requirement, so when we added $3 million to the capital budget, it was, part of that was a grant, 80% of it's a grant, 20% of it is local funds. FEMA projects, Raymond talked about those things. We added, the total set of projects is $4.3 million. If you recall, recall, we had $1.5 million allocated for that. Those funds were only the local match portion of what we've got. So, although the number went up to 4.3, our local match did not change. So that says 75% of those numbers are FEMA reimbursement and 25% of it's local match. So when you see that big increase in there, in the capital budget report, that's what it's all about. Hawker's Page, that's the one Raymond talked about with the wall, that, you know, our position is that when it failed in May, the failure next November was the result of the other one. We got the other. We're still debating with FEMA over that. We think that's a risk of $300,000. So I just, you know, when you look at what the numbers are, that if push comes to shove, we've got to fix the walls. It could be at the worst case a $300,000 hit. I have not given up yet on FEMA, and nor will we, for at least 1 or 2 more iterations of this to make sure. That process is still under review. We talked about the rail contract. We got 4 RFPs. I'm going to repeat again that it's really important that we're going to bring forward a recommendation for this contract in June, the June board meeting. I'm going to request that it would be very important that we are able to approve a contract in June, if at all possible, because that gives us 3 months, which is probably the absolute minimum to do the mobilization if it's a new contractor. The existing contractor is one of the 4, and so, but we need to make sure we have enough time to make that happen. So what I am recommending we do is that we spend the bulk of the work session next month talking about this contract, keeping in mind this is about 50% of our budget. Maybe it's less now. I don't know where it's going to be, but in years past it's been about half our budget. So very important, and again, something that it will drive decisions on service level and all the other things we have going on. We're talking about the comprehensive operational analysis changes, other service changes, bus purchases, all those things. This is really the last piece that we need to know in order to really chart the path into the future years.
And it's a long-term commitment.
It is. It's good question. It is a very long-term commitment. We have a 9-year initial term and a 5-year additional term, 5-year extension. The reason it's 9 is because when DART and the T went to their project, you'll remember we were part of that project and we decided it was not in our best interest. And there's about 1 million reasons on the previous slide why it didn't go that way. They will be up, they went for a 10-year contract starting in October of last year. It's logical to think that we should time ours to end at the same time theirs does in case we think that a joint contract makes sense. Both contracts will terminate at the same time by having a 9-year contract. And then an additional 5 years. So it could be 14 years. Even if we don't renew, it's 9. And that's a long, that's a long period of time for us to be, we'll have a, to be committed. It'll be good that we'll have a secure knowledge of our budget and what it's going to be, how those things happen, and so we can have regular, ongoing operations with this. But it's very important. So, and that's going to be one of those, like the budget vote we're about to take, that y'all are, not we, y'all are about to take, is one of those special votes that requires, I believe it's going to, Joe, correct me if I'm, it needs to be as many of y'all here as possible. So to make sure that we get, again,
2 out of 3 and 8 out of 17. Jim, one
Yes.
quick question. Will the first discussion of the O&M contract take place in the Program Services Committee on June the 14th? Will it be ready for that or not?
I am not sure. I can tell you that if we are ready, we will. And actually, the Executive Committee is the next week, is it not?
Same week.
Same day. Same day. It's combined.
So the week, when do we have it? Is it the 23rd?
Yes.
The board meeting is the 23rd? We should know by then. Let us make sure we're not in the final throes of the negotiation before we do that. But that would be my goal, is to at least shed light on that and begin the discussion on where we are at the Program Services Executive Committee Day, on how we go into that, so that it won't be just the very first word you hear about this is at the board meeting or in the packet that goes up Friday night. So we'll have to, that's going to be a game day kind of call on that day PTC, you'll notice one thing we did, Anna did, and her team, is we broke the PTC project into two pieces. One was the preparation and the next is implementation. The preparation was everything that occurred prior to November of last year. So all the work we did in the previous work, preparing specs and things like that was set in one area. And as we look at the contract that we had right now with Alstom and also what we're doing with CPC for the shunt enhancement is all lumped together under a budget that's $16.7 million. Now, we currently have under contract 14.4, and then that's the gap that we have to cover some of the other change orders and things that we have in the process. So that's why we feel pretty comfortable where we are budget-wise. Now, that $16.7 million is the 12.5 we got from COG, about 900,000 we got in federal funds that we saved away from 5307 money, and the bonds that have already been sold for PTC to be used as matching funds. So that's the money we essentially have banked or allocated to us now without selling more bonds. That's why we could not sell the $5.5 million in bonds.
So generally you have $3.3 million of room left in the
About two point three.
I'm sorry, 2.3 left in the PTC budget. Okay.
We'll get more.
Oh, sorry. Two bags there.
And so, again, it's all change order expected. We're expected to be able to cover that with those combination of funds that we already have dedicated. Next slide. And then the bond sale, I wanted to, not only did we take the $5.5 million out, we also took the debt service out, which is a little over $250,000 in 2019. Recall, the bond sale, the year of the bond sale, you don't make a debt service payment. There's the first payment's interest only, then you go to interest plus principal. That's how this was assumed. And it's almost $400,000 in the following years, so for 20 years. So those are the savings that we're going to see in the out years by not selling the $5.5 million in bonds in 2018. So it's a good news story. Fleet replacement, we submitted a bus and bus facilities grant to replace 23 buses. So hope does spring eternal. I don't think we're going to get 23 buses, but we hopefully will get something. We'll see how that comes back. And then we'll be addressing that in the budget, in the FY17 budget out here. Multimodal facility, we'll talk about that in 17. That's our office. We're in the second year of a 3-year lease with 2 one-year extensions here. And so that's part of what we need to discuss is how does that time out with the progress that we go forward. Probably about a 2-year time horizon to design and build a building. Minimum. So we need to kind of think through how we're going to talk about our lease here. And we try to get another year added on, do we not? How are we going to proceed forward? So some interesting things that we need to talk about as we go into the FY17 budget. And then the last is, we do have it's been a known fact, there's a part of our big portion of our land at the rail owned facility was a landfill. It was a gravel quarry and it's not a licensed landfill. We knew that going in its map. We're getting some more details on that in terms of remediating it. Some of the things on the surface first, and then look at how we can make that happen. I didn't put any dollars up here. We're trying to get brownfield remediation grants for that. So, but those are things, I just put some items up here that are in our next set of considerations. Now with that, there's more details that you have in your slides on some of the other savings, but I'm going to stop right here and see if you have any questions, or if Anna, if you'd like to add anything to what I have. Jim?
Of the 23 buses that you mentioned for replacement, what percentage of that 23 is really critical?
Well, the thing that we're faced with, all of them are really important, but we have some 06 Gilligs that are closing in on the end of their 12-year useful life. That's the rated useful life, and as Raymond said, we can stretch some of those if we have to, but our goal would be to replace those or to phase their replacement starting very quickly. We have a whole, I can't predict the exact numbers, it was 10 or 11 in 06, and another 9, and we have a few more that were older buses, that were the buses here in Louisville. But the bulk of the 06 and 07 Gilligs are the ones that, if we're not careful, we're going to have a bunch of broken buses all at the same time. got a bunch of new buses at one time. Bad news is, 12 years later, we have a bunch of broke buses, if we're not careful.
So at least a fourth of that is really critical mass, more or less.
Now, we've got 7 new Gilligs that we have already ordered and are in production. Raymond said we got 1 today, 3 more coming the rest of this month. We got 3 more coming in, Michelle, April, May timeframe, April-ish. And so we've got 7 new buses coming. And then as we go forward, we'll again see what we get in the grant.
We may have a more pressing need for cutaways before long.
And these were all big buses we put in there because we have a contract for 30-something Gilligs, right? We have a big bus contract, there's a lot of options. We can quickly execute that. I would anticipate in FY17 we'll be buying small buses for access, command response, maybe in Louisville, and kind of weigh what we do in Louisville in terms of the right sizing of the buses. And so we'll talk through that.
And the grant award notification is in July, so we'll know pretty soon.
Yeah.
So this schedule of delivery will obviate the next block obsolescence. You are avoiding that and improving on that.
We're improving on it. Now, the bus, we actually considered that, these new buses coming in were factored into the grant request. So it was net of those when we did that.
So what happens to buses that we dispose?
We auction them, and if there's more than $5,000 in value remaining, we have to give money back to the FDA.
Well, we actually put it into
Put
a
it back
grant
into a
line
grant.
to use for other stuff as employee list.
There's a federal, the 80%, at the buses, when they fully depreciate, then whatever's remaining is ours, net of this 5,000 units that they've got.
But
It just rolls back in.
We do an online auction of all our stuff, so Lone Star Auctioneers handles all the online auctions.
And we sell desks and things we don't need, any stuff we don't, old computers, right, Javier? Yeah, stuff that's not just literally trash, we auction.
There's a bus break.
There is, and actually we sold to many places, a lot to Mexico. We had some bars from Mexico, across the US actually.
So, I mean, if you think about the used bus market, I mean, we picked up buses from TAPS, and they were almost new, but those 6 buses will go a long way to helping our, spare ratio and all that, because the FDA doesn't want us to have a lot of excess fleet just for spares. 20% is the max, we aim for somewhere between 15 and 20%. Well, that's spare ratio. So, Anna, have I missed any big points?
No, sir, you were very thorough.
Any other questions on the revised budget?
And staff recommends approval of the revised budget estimated.
Do I hear a motion to approve the revised budget?
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, budget is revised.
Thank you.
Item 2B, approve financial policies.
Anna, could you do a very brief briefing of the brief changes?
Yes, item 76 in your agenda packet. As part of the process, after the budget is adopted typically, we bring the financial policies to the Finance Committee for review. They kind of set the groundwork for the upcoming year to see if there's any changes. We have in the past made some modifications. This year, the Finance Committee reviewed the financial policies, and what you have before you today is their recommendation, really just one what I would say is a minor change, basically just to change the expenditure policy as it relates to the compensation review, to make that a total compensation review that's done every 3 years rather than every 2 years, as was done as was previously referenced. And that is really the only change in the policies. Otherwise, the Finance Committee forwarded them to the board for approval and implementation. Then we use this kind of as the framework for developing any future budgets and or to guide the policy, the finance activities.
Did you restate that on every 2 versus every 3?
Correct. In the current,
3 versus 2, vote for 3.
Going to 3.
Total compensation versus salary only, that was the question.
Right. That was the reason we changed that, because originally it was salary only. But when we made it total compensation, it's a bigger project, so it's extended to 3, right?
And it was recommended that a total compensation review be done every 3 years. You don't need to do that every 2 years.
Staff recommends approval.
Motion approved.
Second.
Second.
Any comments, discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that is approved.
Item 2C, review and approval of Resolution 1603 approving the Title VI non-discrimination program update.
Let me kick off a little bit about that, and I'm going to ask Christina to talk about it also. This is Title VI of the Civil Rights Act talks about how we deliver our service and that we do so in a manner that is non-discriminatory. Christina has been working pretty tirelessly on this, along with a whole bunch of people on the staff to make this happen. We have to review our policy. One thing that's important is that we'll be submitting this, presuming that it is approved. It's due to the FTA the 1st of June. And most important about it is that what's been found is there shouldn't be nothing we're doing is demonstrated to be discriminatory. It would have some impact on us in terms of how we do our public meetings, how we discuss, and how the actions that are taken are reported back to the board. Now we put some full printed copies around the table. There's a few of those around. If anybody wants their own copy of that, if we don't have enough, we'll be happy to get it for you. It's a little light reading. And certainly, if you have any questions, we'll do that. I'd like to ask Christina to talk a little bit about this, because she's certainly much more familiar with it than I. But it's really important that if at all possible, that we move this forward today. So, Christina?
Yes, and as Jim did a great overview, really the document is just a compilation of our existing documents that we currently already have at the agency, and also a very detailed outline of our processes for fare changes, service changes, our public meeting process, how we provide documentation to the public, letting them know what their rights are for Title VI, and then outlining if they do have a concern or something they need to submit, a complaint, so it has a complaint process. So again, it's just a document containing everything that we currently do, nothing new. It does have some demographics of our service area. We also included Frisco, since we're now providing service in Frisco. And then even though we have not made changes to Louisville or Denton from the recommended COA, we went ahead and included that information in there as well, because we are planning to move forward with that process. So again, we can answer any questions you might have, or if you want to sit down and review any particular parts of it, just feel free to let us know. We can do that.
I just have one quick question. Page 1, this reference in the middle here, this is the actual text from Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, right?
Yes, I
This
don't
is
have
an
it in front of me,
excerpt?
but if I remember correctly.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to confirm that.
And if I could, Christine, if I could add one thing to this. When we go to add a service, delete a service, change fares, there's an analysis that has to be done to make sure that we're not showing disparate or disproportionate, right?
Impacts?
Learn something good. Impacts to any of our groups of folks in our service area. So we need to think very carefully about that, and we will bring those things to you, but that's some analysis that we'll be doing. It's kind of an extra step that has to be done as we move forward with our processes.
And if you recall that decision wheel that we always show at different things, that wheel is so important because it includes all the different processes, not only from the marketing, communications, operations, and finance standpoint, but also the Title VI implications that go along with each of those pieces.
So it shows when we have the changes to the schedules in August and January, the things that have to happen beforehand, and the actions you take as a board, and consider those impacts. We'll provide all that information, get all that analysis done, but those are things that will be presented to you as part of change in service. So, and we recommend approval.
So we will submit it, and they will let us know if they have any issues with it. Do
Right.
they have a certain amount of time to get back to
So this
us?
is much like the triennial in that you submit it and then they send you a response with any issues that they need you to address, and you can address them immediately. However, the last time we submitted our document, so typically you submit a document every 3 years. We submitted it 3 years later. Our due date is coming up June 1. We still had not received any information from the FTA regarding the previous one. So they said, we glanced at it real quick, looks pretty good. Couple things you need to address in the next one, but go ahead and work on your next one and submit it June 1st. So hence why we're here. We were waiting for the other one, and it never really got reviewed
And
properly.
Nelson Nygaard, that did the comprehensive operational analysis, did this analysis, did a big portion of the technical part of this analysis.
As part of the COA.
As part of the COA.
That was just pulled out and put it in the plan.
So we would probably need some technical help in the next iterations as we go through it as well. So just as when you look at costs, look at things coming down the pike, that goes with this whole idea, how to do this.
Okay.
And we recommend approval.
Do we have a
Sure.
motion to approve this Title VI submission?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions, further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Item 2C is approved. Item 3, convene executive session.
I don't have a recommendation for any executive session items unless there's a member of the board that wishes to see an item on the agenda discussing executive session.
We have nothing. Item 4 is reconvene open session, into open session. And item 5 is chair report. We've talked about 20 things, mobility, in the work session, and we're going to put a link to the website here for those who want to explore that further. It is interesting. It is quite interesting. I wanted to bring this to your attention. Denton County Precinct 3 has a new governmental center. There's a grand opening on June 3rd, 2016 at 3 p.m., 400 North Valley Parkway. That would be Commissioner Bobby Mitchell's area. So for those of you who are interested in that. I'm the alternate to the RTC for Charles Emery, and I know we got an email this last week. There's a group in Texas called Empower Texas, and they requested contact information for all the RTC members. I'm not quite sure what that involves, but they did request that. And that is, I think, all I have for chair reports. Jim, President's report?
Since we just approved the budget, there will be no budget transfers today. Regional transportation issues, we've covered those. I think, some of the discussion that Christina had about the different cities, the Frisco's, the Lincoln, the 35W, there's a lot going on in the region that I think DCTA should be very proud of to be a part of those things. So we'll continue to report those things as we go forward, but I think we're in really good stead with that. I would like to take a couple of things in community interest, actually the community of the board. We do have a revised, the updated calendar. That's one of the things y'all requested in terms of our making sure we updated this when we put things in there. The meeting on the 25th of the Finance Committee is in here. On a note, just on a personal note, any of y'all that can make that will be very, very positive to not just the Finance Committee members, but any other members who are welcome with that and see the detail that goes into the budget. So if you get the chance, that'd be great. Certainly not required, but it would be a good thing to participate in. And then
I just want to add, June 14th, Program Services and Executive Committee meeting. There will be a rather large, important agenda for those. And June the 23rd will be the board meeting, where we will be discussing the operating agreement going forward. So I know it's summertime, but
if there's some reason that if for personal reasons or business that you can't be at that meeting, please let us know, because we're going to need to make sure we have that the 8-member vote with 2 from the member cities present for that vote. Oh, and don't forget, next Thursday night, those of y'all that are there, we'll be certainly sending out a reminder, but it should be interesting. It's certainly a good chance to see on a regional matter, get to put a face with names, with the DART board members. I think that's actually very positive. So I'd love to see you there. And, anybody that wants to carpool, needs a ride, or anything, please let me know, let Rusty know. We will figure it out. If you want to meet here and consolidate one vehicle, we can do that, or a couple of vehicles. Whatever would suit y'all's needs, we'll be happy to help with that. Anything else? Yes, John.
I would like to commend our staff for getting these made. It took a long time. I won't say how long it's taken, but thank you for identifying who the person that represents that community is. It's very nice to look across and not have to refer back to your notes and see who that representative is. Thank you.
Just as an update, the printer didn't exactly provide what we asked for, so next meeting you'll see ones that have our logo on them, as well as the printer misspelled a couple, so if you're missing one, that's probably why. So, we're working with the printer to rectify that, so you'll have updated ones next work.
Thank y'all.
Do we have all the board pictures that we need, or are we still missing
We are
some?
still missing a handful. I think Rusty is gonna be following up on that.
When she can talk again.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Has a list.
If you did not get your photo taken, please go see Rusty after the board meeting.
That'd be great. And then, okay, for resolutions, just to make sure, we need the chair to sign those. We need the secretary to sign them also. Mr. Huckabee and Mr. Pomeroy, if y'all would please see. Ms. Comer, you'll be in the back, or you want to catch, wherever you are. Please don't leave the building without signing something. And thank you all for your attendance and for your support of the agency.
So anything else from the board?
Motion adjourned.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Vice Street,